You don't need to say a word. You don't need to touch her. You don't need to prove you're interesting, successful, or kind. All it takes is one moment, one look, one silence, one decision that she cannot control, and from that moment on, she will never see you the same again. The comfort disappears, the illusion of control vanishes, and in its place comes a sweet discomfort, the kind that makes her afraid to lose you, and yet crave you even more. Want to know what shatters the emotional power women have over most men today? It's not money, not charm, not smooth words. It's something most men have completely lost: silence, self-control, non-reaction, presence so disciplined. She can't read you. That's what breaks the game. Because she doesn't know what you're thinking. She doesn't know if you need her. She doesn't know whether you'll move closer or walk away. And it's that uncertainty that makes her look at you differently, not as someone to manage or manipulate, but as a man she never saw coming. In this video, I'll reveal 5 deceptively simple, yet surgically precise moments. 5 opportunities to flip the entire power dynamic without yelling, chasing, or compromising. Each moment is a strike against her sense of control, and a step toward becoming the man she has no strategy for. You don't need to chase her. You don't need to impress her. You just need to show her one thing: you're not afraid to lose, and you don't need to be kept. And from that moment forward, you'll live rent-free in her mind, not as a past fling, but as an unresolved mystery she'll never forget. 1. Silence when she tries to provoke you. She says something sharp. Maybe it's petty, maybe disrespectful, or maybe it's a subtle jab meant to cut you just enough to make you flinch. She's not yelling. She doesn't need to. She's testing, and she's waiting for the usual reaction: a defensive reply, a wounded ego, a raised voice, or an emotional plea. But this time, nothing. You just look at her, not with anger, not with pain, just calm, stoic, like a man who's already decided what's beneath him. And emotional chaos is at the top of that list. No raised eyebrows, no over-explaining, maybe a small smirk, and you walk away. Brother, this is nuclear, not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. You see, most women are used to emotional leverage. They know exactly what to say to trigger you. It's not because they're evil, it's because they want to know what you're made of. They want to feel your strength, and the only way to do that is by pressing against it. But if you react like every other man, she confirms what she already suspected. You're not in control. You're predictable. You're easy to shake. But when you don't flinch, when you choose silence over defense, composure over chaos, you stop being the man she thought she had figured out, and become the man she has no blueprint for. That's when everything shifts. She might get louder. She might try again, harder this time, throwing more emotional hooks. But behind the noise, there's something else growing. Respect. Not the kind you demand, not the kind you negotiate, but the kind that's earned in one moment of absolute emotional discipline. There's a rule in Stoic warfare: he who angers you controls you. Let that sink in. Every time you react, every time you let emotion dictate your words, you surrender your frame. You give her the keys to your identity. But when you stay grounded, when you respond with poise or not at all, you send a very different message. I see what you're doing. I understand the game, and I'm not playing. That message? It echoes louder than any argument. It's what makes her sit in silence hours later, wondering why she couldn't break you, why her words bounced off you like stones thrown at a mountain. And that's the power of the first moment, the moment when she expects a boy and meets a man who does not tremble, who does not chase, who does not need to win the fight, because he already owns the battlefield within himself. Remember this: the strongest stance is silence. the sharpest weapon is composure, and the most unforgettable man is the one who looked her in the eye, smiled slightly, and walked away, unshaken. 2. Walking away without a word. She's being distant, hot one day, cold the next. She flirts with other guys in front of you, not boldly, but just enough for you to notice. She delays replies, drops subtle hints, tests your reaction. Most men respond exactly as expected. They confront her. They send long texts. They ask, "What's going on?" They try to fix the vibe, to win her back, to restore her attention. But not you. You say nothing. No long goodbye. No final statement. No sarcastic remark or emotional plea. You simply go silent, and this time, you mean it. You disappear not as a punishment, but as a reflection of your standards. Because what she's doing, it doesn't meet them. You don't explain yourself. You don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you struggle to understand her mixed signals. You just remove your presence, fully, and without noise. And that silence? It's not emptiness. It's not weakness. It's power. And it changes everything. Here's what happens next. At first, she acts like she doesn't care. She posts something coincidentally meant for you. She smiles wider around other men. She waits, expecting you to fold. But then time passes, and something starts to eat away at her. Confusion. She checks her phone, replays your last words, wonders if you saw her story, wonders why you haven't chased, why you didn't fight back, why you didn't need to. Because now, you're not the guy seeking her validation. You're the man who removed his attention and never looked back. That absence, it echoes. It says more than 1,000 texts ever could. It says, "I'm not here to convince you of my worth. I'm not here to decode games. If you want to lose me, lose me. I don't beg to stay where I'm not respected." And that haunts her, because she didn't expect it. She thought she had time. She thought you'd chase like the rest. She thought you needed her to validate your place in her life. But now, for the first time, she's not sure. She starts to question her own moves. She reconsiders her value. She realizes, you're not the backup plan. You're the standard. Understand this. When you walk away without drama, you do something most men are too afraid to do. You protect your peace over her confusion. You choose dignity over desperation. You make her feel the weight of your absence, not out of spite, but out of principle. And when you do that, even once, she'll never unsee it, never unfeel it, never forget it. Not because you punished her, but because you were the first man to walk away without looking back. 3. Delayed response, disciplined power. She texts you. Not a long message, just a simple "hey" or "what are you up to?" and you see it. But you don't reply. Not immediately. Not because you're trying to manipulate her, but because you're not available. You're building, training, thinking, living, and your peace is not on demand. Most men think attraction is about access. Text her fast. Be responsive. Show her she's a priority. But here's the truth. Availability kills mystery. Instant replies kill tension. Always being ready kills desire. Why? Because if she knows she can have you at any second, she never has to wonder. And if she never wonders, she never craves. Delaying your response, not as a trick, but as a discipline, sends a message louder than any compliment. I am not a man waiting for you. I'm a man living a life that doesn't pause for anyone. She texts at 2 p.m. You reply when your focus is complete. She wants to see you Friday? You check if your schedule allows it, not your loneliness. She makes a move expecting you to jump. You don't jump. You move intentionally. And in that pause, that short delay between her desire and your response, something starts to shift. She starts to feel tension, Not rejection, not disinterest, just space. And that space, it becomes the amplifier of your value. She starts to ask, why didn't he answer yet? What is he doing that's more important? Is he with someone else? Did I say something wrong? That's not insecurity. That's attraction being reawakened, because she's no longer in control of your time. Here's what most men don't get. If your time is always available, it becomes worthless. But when your time is earned, reserved, protected, it becomes a privilege. And women don't chase what's free. They chase what's rare. So, no, you're not being cold. You're not being distant. You're being a man with order, structure, boundaries. A man who texts back when he's ready, not when he's bored. A man who isn't driven by the fear of losing her, but by the conviction of not losing himself. Every time you pause, you create contrast, you create tension, you create room for her to feel your value. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're hard to shake, and that is what makes you unforgettable. 4. Saying no without explaining yourself. She asks you to bend, maybe just a little. Cancel your plans, lend her money, change your priorities. Do something that feels just slightly off, just once, just for her. And in that moment, every man she's dealt with before would hesitate, overthink, overtalk, over-explain. But you say no, and then you go quiet. Not cold, not cruel, just final, unshaken. No rambling, no soft landing, no desperate attempt to make her feel better for hearing a boundary. You don't explain it, because real men don't justify standards that protect their soul. And brother, that silence, it hits harder than any argument, because now she's not just hearing a refusal. She's meeting a force she can't bend. For the first time, she feels the weight of something she can't control. A man with principles, and in her world, a world full of men who'd do anything to please her. You just became dangerous. Here's what most men don't understand. The moment you start explaining your no, you're not protecting her feelings. You're seeking her permission. You're saying, please understand me. Please don't be upset. Please still like me. But a Stoic man doesn't beg to be understood. He doesn't dilute his boundaries to sound more lovable. He doesn't fear being the bad guy in someone else's story, because he refuses to be the traitor in his own. She might pause, go quiet, even recoil a little, because it's not what she's used to. But deep down, she's watching you closer than ever, because there's something magnetic about a man who says no and doesn't need to explain why. She leans in, not with words, but with curiosity, because suddenly, you're not the one dancing around her expectations. You're the one drawing a line she never expected to see. And that line, it awakens something she didn't know she craved. A man who won't bend just to be loved. Stoic power doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't need to prove itself. It stands still, like a mountain in a storm. And when you say no without a speech, without shame, without softness, you show her something rare. A man whose peace is non-negotiable. A man who's already chosen who he is and doesn't owe anyone a footnote. And that's not just strength. That's gravity. And it pulls her in, even as you walk away. 5. Getting close without. Losing control. She's standing in front of you, close. Close enough for you to feel her breath, her warmth, the electricity sparking in the space between. Her eyes lock into yours, her lips slightly parted, her body leaning in, a silent invitation. The air is charged. She expects you to move. She expects you to melt, like every man before you. She expects you to lose control. But then you do the one thing she wasn't prepared for. You step forward, calm, deliberate. You pull her in, close enough for her to feel the beat of your heart. You hold her, steady, grounded, composed. And then, you let her go. You let her be the one to step back, not because you're scared, not because you don't want her, but because you could have continued, and you chose not to. In that one silent act, you deliver a message she'll never forget. I feel you. I want you, but I am not ruled by my desire for you. I don't need to have you to know who I am. And in that instant, she loses control over you, but she falls deeper into your gravity. Most men lose themselves in moments like these. They rush. They surrender to impulse. They let lust override presence. And in doing so, they become predictable, forgettable. But you are still. You are intentional. You enter the storm, but keep your breathing steady. You let her come close, but never quite own you. And that is more intoxicating than anything physical, because it awakens in her the most primal form of desire, delayed fulfillment. Mastery over your desire is the highest expression of masculine power. It's not suppression, it's control with clarity, the ability to choose when, where, and with whom, without losing yourself. And when you maintain control in the heat of tension, you become the man she can't predict, can't shake, can't replace. Because sometimes, the thing that drives a woman wild isn't the kiss, isn't the touch, but that moment you pull her close, then let her go. Not because you had to, but because you could, and didn't. And that space you leave behind, it lives in her mind, forever. If you followed me this far, you've probably noticed something. Each of these moments, the silence, the withdrawal, the delay, the refusal, the restraint, all share one thing in common. They're not loud, they're not flashy, they don't beg for recognition, but each one leaves a mark that's impossible to forget. You don't need to do too much. You don't need to act special. You don't need to prove you're better than anyone. Just once, when you stand firm at the right time. And she will never see you the same again. Maybe it's the moment you held your silence instead of reacting. Or the time you walked away without a word, without drama. Maybe you paused, not to play a game, but because discipline comes before impulse. Maybe you said no calmly, without needing her to understand. Or maybe you pulled her close, then let her go, leaving behind a tension stronger than any kiss. Whichever moment it was, it delivered a message far deeper than words. I'm the kind of man who can't be controlled. I'm not easy to predict, and I don't need to be kept in order to know my worth. From that moment on, you're no longer a choice. You become a mystery, a standard she didn't realize she was measuring other men against, until none of them felt quite like you. You don't fight for attention. You become the reason she turns around to look, uninvited, unprovoked, not because you tried, but because you stood still while everything else begged for validation. And that is the gravity of a Stoic man. He doesn't control others. He doesn't need to be understood. He simply lives by values that are non-negotiable and lets the world react however it wants. So if you've ever done something that made her pause, if you stayed calm when she expected rage, walked away when she thought you'd chase, delayed your response because your life came first, said no without asking for her approval, or held back in the heat of the moment just to protect your frame, then know this: you've stepped out of the realm of replaceable men and become someone unforgettable. If you're ready to become the kind of man who is respected before he's desired, who is remembered not for charm, but for unshakable presence, then hit subscribe to the Unshakeable Stoic path right now. This is not the easy path, but it's the only one for the man who no longer needs to prove anything, not even to himself,